It was only 1 week I was gone. And if anyone doesn't know, I did go last week. Actually, it was the Wednesday before that, down to Florida and sat on a beach and relaxed. That was the first time that I've taken any time off since Barbara began this stroke recovery stuff. And yeah, it's been a year. So off I went, and I woke up on Tuesday morning, and I said, I got it. I'm relaxed. Feels really good. And then I got a call from Barbara that we had a flood. If any of you haven't heard, I have pictures. So what happened was our upstairs office area has a water fountain. And apparently while no one was here, between Monday early afternoon until Tuesday late morning, some point it sprung a leak. And it did, you know how water works. It finds its way. So it found its way. That's the water fountain. And as you can see, all of the baseboards are gone. And I'll explain to you that we very quickly got a company that comes in and does recovery work, and they came in to dry everything out. And when I think it was about 11 when I got the call, and they were here by 2:30, so they really got on top of it. Everything is dry now, but that was the starting point. That's not so bad. Little damage down there. That's in the ladies' bathroom. You can see some of the tiles are popping up from the water that was in there. This is where it really kind of got a little different. That's our kitchen. As you can see, we're missing some ceiling tiles because all of that got wet. All of the HVAC equipment that had insulation around it no longer does. So that's what happens if you go in the kitchen and look up. That's if you look down. And it's all going to be very repairable, and we're working on that. So it seemed a whole lot worse in my head when I was out and when I was a few hundred miles away down in Florida. And that's in the social hall where it actually also took out ceiling tiles and pretty much drenched the cabinets there at the pass through where we put up our coffee when we do that. So that's what I came home to, and it's all right, you know. It's just one of those things in life, and we'll get it fixed, and we're not going to worry about it. We're going to let that be okay. Doesn't stop me from getting some angst about this and a dozen other things that I could tell you about, well, won't. So I came home, and a couple nights ago, I was lying in bed with Barbara, and we were cuddling. And she'd fallen asleep, but I was still there, and I had that angst going on in me. And some words came to me to say. And I love that when we watched The Best of Barbara today, we saw Barbara offer us a mantra about remembering who we are. Well, this kind of came to me as a mantra, this idea of it's all good, it's all God. So holding Barbara in bed, I just let that flow through my mind. She was asleep, so I wouldn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I'm going, it's all good, it's all God. It's all good, it's all God. It's all good, it's all God. And I just kept doing it and doing it. And it seemed to subside this thing inside of me. Because basically, I believe this is true. Now, I haven't always believed this is true, but I have used affirmations or mantras before to make things work in my life. In fact, the big story I've always had is that I had this propensity for years of twisting my right ankle. I was flying down a set of stairs when I was in my 20s from the 6th floor to the ground, whizzing because I was late, and I going around, and I hit one of those spots on the turn in the stairwell, and my ankle went out. And I was screaming on the ground, and it swelled up, and it was nasty. And that was just the start of a journey that lasted like 15 years, at least 15 years, maybe longer than that, of me being able to twist my ankle just about the time that it was totally healthy. And it wasn't that I had any words around that, but I had a feeling when that ankle would twist and go down, it was very painful. And I could remember that feeling, and I would draw up that feeling of that happening. And I realized once I learned this teaching that what I was doing was reinforcing spraining my ankle, so much so that I could walk through a parking lot where there was one tiny little piece of broken asphalt or stone, and my right foot would find it. And down I'd go, writhing in pain. It was the craziest thing. So I came up with a mantra or an affirmation, as we often call them here. I said, my ankles are strong, my ankles are healthy, my ankles support my weight easily. And I would say that over and over and over again. And I realized that the way I was perpetuating it was with that feeling of the ankle. So I insisted on stopping. So anytime that the feeling of it came into my mind, I said my mantra. My ankles are strong, my ankles are healthy, my ankles support my weight easily. And it never happened again. It stopped. It actually happened one time when we were building. It happened the day that we found out that the edge of where we were building the building was in the flood zone. And I did. I fell right out there where I was doing it. The ankle went down. And I knew exactly what had happened. I had stressed myself. And, of course, my answer to that was to move the little flags a little bit out so they were outside the building. I said, okay, that's the flood line now. And I was done with it. That didn't actually work, though. We have to pay insurance because part of our building's in the floodway. They redid it so that a good bit of our building is now in the floodway that wasn't when we purchased this property. But that's all not what I came to tell you about. What I want to tell you about is this journey of making these words, it's all good, it's all God, work for me. Because there's a time in my life where they would not have worked at all. I did not like the word good because it implied that there's bad. And I was raised in a family where I was admonished in a way to say, you be good. Like I had to work at it. Because in the faith community I grew up in, we were all born into sin. So we were all bad to begin with. So then you had to work your way out of it. So this was a lot of work, and I tried. And I never really felt comfortable with it. So I finally let that go. And the way I did that was I learned about the Buddhist teaching where they say that there is no good or bad. There simply is. And I said, oh yeah, that'll work. I'll use that now. And so not that I became a Buddhist, but I certainly liked that idea. And I kind of released the idea of good and bad completely. And then I used this thing that somebody brought to me. I forget who did it, but it's William Shakespeare. Remember the bald playwright with the funny collar? He wrote, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. All right, see, we're all making this good and bad stuff up. And I stuck with that for a while. And then I was introduced to Ernest Holmes. The man's obsessed with good. He writes about it all through the Science of Mind textbook. I'm reading this going, no. And I wasn't rejecting the teaching. There's lots of things about the Science of Mind I liked immediately. But this idea of pressing the good just wasn't working for me because it was implying to me that there must also be a bad. And I couldn't really get what he was saying. Here's an example. You saw it this morning when you came in. This was the quote from the Science of Mind this morning. The Science of Mind is not a special revelation of any individual. He was talking about Jesus. That's a whole different conversation. It is rather the culmination of all revelations. The revelation that good is universal. Good is universal. Good is universal. Okay? And that as much good as any individual is able to incorporate into his or her life is theirs to use. This constitutes the science of mind. The place that got me was good is universal. And it took me literally years to get this. That what he's saying is not that good is the thing that we go to instead of the bad, but that good is all there is. That this idea of bad is not real. That we're not bad. We are not in any way bad. That the truth about us is that we are beings of love and light. And our lives are about good. And it doesn't require that balance or that two-sided dichotomy for us to understand this, that there's something to this idea of universal good. So I sat with that, and I worked with that, and I thought about that a lot. And it seemed to take place, it seemed to find its place in me. So the idea of it, isn't that interesting that I put my pages backwards here? So as that worked out in me, the premise of divine good became something that I could accept. And it kind of shifted me away from that thing that I couldn't have this idea of good in my life, but that the good that Holmes was talking about is the quintessential presence of the divine. And that's where I went with it. Now, that takes care of the good. The other thing that we're talking about is God. And there are people in this room right now that don't like the word God. And that's fine. I didn't either. I had a real problem with it because every time I thought the word God, I went to this human-like being that was in a place called heaven that had some control over my life and over my destiny. If I didn't do it according to his plan, I was going to end up in a heap of trouble. And I rejected that. I remember going to my minister when I was a teenager, probably 17 or 18. I said, I've got this fundamental question I can't resolve in my head. You keep telling me that I have to be grateful for Jesus before anything else, that that's the most important thing to be grateful for. Don't I need to be grateful for my life first? Because if I don't have a life, I don't need Jesus. And he said, that's absolutely wrong. You must be grateful for Jesus first. No explanation as to how that works out, but that's what he insisted on. So I left the church. It just didn't work. It wasn't logical. I had to be grateful for me first, or there was nothing to be grateful for beyond that. So I went off into the world without a God. I went to Australia where I lived for a year and found my first spiritual teacher. And he was a good transition for me because when people would ask him about God, he would say, I don't know about that. He knew about other things, very deep spiritual concepts, but he didn't want to talk about God. And that let me off the hook for a while so that I could delve into this idea of being spiritual without having to have a relationship with a deity. Of course, I still hadn't heard this science of mind stuff about that Holmes had written about back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. That was still something to come. So when I left Australia, and of course I went the third day I was back in my hometown of Miami, I'm driving down the road and I see a sign that says Science of Mind. It was a very unkept sign. It had rust on it. But that didn't bother me at all. I wanted to know what that meant, science of mind, because my teacher in Australia was all about mind. So I went in and a woman came out from the back and I said, so what's science of mind? And I don't remember what she said, but she was mesmerizing and she invited me to come on Sunday, so I did. And I sat there on the front row that first Sunday, the same place I sat for the next 5 years. And the woman that came out from the back from her office was Barbara, the first person of this teaching that I met. And what a difference that made. So I've got Ernest Holmes, and I've got this issue of God. And I'll tell you, someone that really helped me with that was Rocco Errico. I don't know if you know who Rocco Errico is, but he's a Bible scholar. He, I believe, still lives in the Atlanta area. And he came up here and spoke to us one Sunday. And he still writes for the Science of Mind magazine. He's in there every month. And Rocco stood here and told a story, among many things he shared, about a missionary who had traveled to Germany, 1,500 years ago, and was teaching them about the Christian faith, and said, so. They asked him, well, what do you call this God of yours? And they didn't call it God because that word they didn't have. They have words like Yahweh and Jehovah, but they didn't have a German word. So the missionary said, call him Gut. And Gut means good. And that evolved into the idea of God. So God and good are the same thing. They come from the same place. They're the same idea. And when you understand that, the word God's okay. You still got to get rid of all those images and ideas of God being a being. God is not a being. God is an essence. God is the creative force of the universe. God is what animates everything. God is all there is. That's what we say. God is all there is. So, I took that this week. I took that and I worked with it. And I said it probably several thousand times. I said it that night. I said it the next day. I'm driving the car around. I'm just chanting this thing. It's all good. It's all God. It's all good. It's all God. So, and I guess I should speak to the other big word in there, and that's it's. What is it's? What am I talking about? I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about there's nothing left out of this. There's only God. There's only good. And it's my job to find it, no matter what is going on. It's my job to find God, to find the good. No matter how troubled things seem, no matter how challenging things seem, no matter how despair seems to want to come in. There's only God. So how can I do it any other way? Well, apparently I need to be reminded. And I believe that all of us, even the ones that have been doing this for years and years and years, fall off the wagon of getting it. We fall into that place where we can somehow feel despair. Well, not all of us. Barbara doesn't. At least I don't see her do it. And she's so sweet to me when I do it. She gives me a little space, lets me go through it. And if I don't quite come out of it quick enough for her, she'll just kind of look at me and go, "You sure you want to play it this way?" And I remember. I remember who I am, were her words today. I remember what this life is about. And that doesn't mean that there's not challenges. It doesn't mean that there are not hard things. It doesn't mean there are not unknowns or outcomes that we're not sure about. But the truth is that every bit of it is good, and every bit of it is God. And what we have to do is know that. And we have to live from that knowing, or what's the point? I mean, even if we want to play the game that all is lost, that things are wrong, that we're going to lose, if you want to do it that way, that's a spiritual experience. But it's a hard one. And I'm not suggesting this is going to take all the hardness away. Life seems to come with some hardness. It comes with some pain. It comes with some uncertainty. And it's our job to remember the truth. It's our job to hold ourselves to that mental standard of being greater than the thing that we face. And when we do that, when we remember, we can find our way through it. Again, I'm not promising sweetness and light all the time, but I think this plan is a better one than anything else. So what I want to do this morning for the next couple minutes, just a couple minutes, is do what Barbara did on her Best of Barbara. And I want you to share this mantra with me. I want us to do it together, because I not only need to say it, I need to hear it. So let this be your gift to me, and my guess is it's going to be a gift to you. So I'll do it once, and then join me, and we'll do it until we're done, and we'll know when we're done. It's all good. It's all God. 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 One more time. It's all good. It's all God. And so it is. See if that has something in it for you. See if this helps make the place that you're going a little brighter. That you can remember who you are and what God is. It's the same thing. I love you all very much. God bless you.